Alright guys, welcome to the video that you have been asking for. This is the video on the American Defense Research Chinese potted airsoft quality lasers. Alright, let's grab a fresh mag and just go. I want to bring up a few things. First, American Defense Research did send me the laser for review. However, they only sent me the Mawl C1. This was after I had already purchased the NGAL from these guys in order to test it out and see, because you guys are all about this stuff. So I used my ad money that I get from you guys watching these videos, as well as some of my commissions from some Avent leak clicks and commission sales and things like that, to purchase and fund the NGAL. But the goal here was to put 1,000 rounds combined through the NGAL and the Mawl, and I wanted to do a little bit higher stress than normal because, of course, anyone can put it on a 22 or a 9mm. Airsoft grade is probably going to be okay, but we went ahead and amped it up a little bit by putting it on a 5.5-inch 5.56 at its best and hottest moments. In fact, we got this thing so hot, I've never seen it go red hot until we hit about 150 rounds constantly through it. We had our 5th magazine just finished and the can was literally glowing. I mean, we're getting to a little bit dusker time right now, so we're preparing for the night shoot where you're gonna see these things in action. But this is just to kind of preface what we're doing. Now, the first thing that we did was we went ahead and put it on paper, which was an ID target. We've got the top one zeroed, or not zeroed, but our top aim is for the NGAL, and our bottom aim towards the center of the C-zone is for the Mawl. We did this with Viz Laser, and now we've got our Viz Laser already assigned to our optics so that they are zeroed and ready for nighttime use. Now, Chinese products are kind of all the rage right now, and there's a good reason for that. The main thing that we look for is full power. But one of the things that was real interesting about the Mawl C1 Plus from ADR was the fact that it offered V-cell technology in the illuminators in both the wide and the tight. Now, V-cell is very important, or VCSEL, V-C-S-E-L. It's very important to understand why that matters so much and why it actually doesn't matter when we're talking about these Chinese clones. VCSEL is basically a technology of a flat array of lasers that has basically a circle of about 19 different diodes that are each able to be eye-safe rated. So when we're talking about FDA approvals and US grade laser products that have to be eye-safe, VCSEL kind of skirts that line, and you know how we like to talk about gray areas. Well, VCSEL is one of those gray areas. It skirts that line by providing 19 eye-safe lasers at 0.7 milliwatts that actually are additive to the total output power that you get downrange. So when we talk about illuminators, which is what the big sneeze is all about, right? We want as much cutting power as we can to be able to break through the lights and everything else and make sure that we can see and engage correct IDs down at good distances. So with VCSEL, it gives the consumer market in the US the ability to have something that's 50 milliwatts while still actually being eye-safe by FDA regulations. This is why the Holosun Iris is such a huge buzz. So why do I say it kind of does and doesn't matter when I talk about the Mawl C1 Plus? Well, it matters because it does give us a little bit better spread on the illuminator. It gives us a little bit cleaner patterning, which it does have some diffraction on the glass that causes a ripple outline. I don't like that too much, but we'll see it in the video footage later. But the one thing that it does do is it gives us a little bit more controlled beam. Now, when I say it doesn't matter is because, guys, we're in the Chinese full power market anyway. VCSEL was a technology that we utilize, it's more expensive, mind you, in order to circumvent the FDA eye-safe rules and be able to get full power illuminators. But as we can see with the NGAL from ADR, we already achieved that, and we get a nice bright 35 milliwatt illuminator. Now, fun fact, I actually prefer, and this is kind of skipping ahead, but I actually prefer the illuminator on the NGAL because I can tighten it out real tight into a laser, or I can broaden it all the way into a nice flood. And when I broaden it to that flood, I actually get better contrast on my subjects downrange. And when I compare it to the same footprint of the Mawl, I actually don't see a difference in cutting power. In fact, I've overlaid them directly next to each other and the output was almost indistinguishable from each other. Now, I'm not buying in to say they're the exact same laser. I looked at it the best I could see under that glass, and it does look like it's a different diode, which is probably the VCSEL as advertised. But the VCSEL, again, doesn't really mean much because we're still getting full power in the Chinese market with things like the NGAL from either Somo Gear or ADR, which let's talk about the ADR NGAL for just a second. ADR basically outsourced their NGAL to the same manufacturer that's designing and developing the ISEG NGAL, or the Invisible Sight Evolutionary Gear NGAL, which is just a more reduced quality control but beefed up NGAL version that Invisible Sight was already producing, but they did it in collaboration with Evolution Gear, which is an airsoft company over in China that's producing a lot of knockoff EOTechs and everything else. They even had a really cool OGL for a little while, but it kind of disappeared off market. But nevertheless, they did a really good job because it has recoil lugs built into the actual NGAL. So your lug that you're screwing down isn't actually a lug itself like it is on the Somo Gear. It's just the grip that's gripping the sides, and then the recoil is all being absorbed by the laser housing. When you compare that to the Somo Gear, you can see that the design from the Somo Gear is going to be designed for failure later down the road. And you can also see that it's not as designed for zero repeatability when you take the laser off and put the laser back on. Now, in the preliminary testing where we did a lot of mag dumps, I was moving things around. We did some fasty fast super safe dumps with the 11.5-inch Criterion Mixia Systems build here with the Mawl on top. And when we put it back onto the 5.5, there was no POI shift noticed, meaning that we had a good return to zero. And I can say the same for the NGAL. As I pulled it off of one device, put it back on the other, and go back to my original device, my POI, as long as I was in the same PIC slot, remained the same. So there's something to that. Now, as far as co-alignment, when we zero these lasers, both the NGAL and the Mawl, we were able to zero with the Viz laser and confirm with the IR laser later at night. Nothing had shifted. Now, one thing I do want to pick about on the Mawl is because it's so big, bulky, and hangs off to the side, when we're in a canted position, the laser is now perfectly on top of the barrel. So when we're in the canted position with this laser, we are actually going to be over our bore axes. So we don't have to worry about the divergence of left and right or windage. We just know that we're going to be dealing with an up and down divergence. So when we're up, we're going to be hitting just a little bit low of our aiming point, as we can see with the targets that we shot. Now, the Mawl is more so designed for CQC combat rather than engagements at a distance. And the reason we know this is because the Mawl is designed with two different illuminators. First, we have the low flood, which is basically an outcast that gets everything in a close perspective, and it's not going to start auto-gaining your nods too much. Now, unfortunately, in my experience during testing, it was pretty bright and it reflected quite bad off this behemoth of a can that it actually caused my nods to auto dim quite a bit, but it was still functional. And the the IR laser at that mode is also low power. And so when I'm shining it onto reflective objects, I'm not really worried about it going back and lasering my nods because it just seemed to be a good balance. So it had that going for it. But because in CQC, when you're riding into this position, you're in a canted position, so that you're able to engage and then move on with your mission to mom's basement or whatever you're out there LARPing these days. So that's mainly its use case. Whereas with the NGAL is a lot more versatile. We're able to dial in with the illumination control on the back, which is going to either tighten it down almost to a laser beam or widen it out all the way to a flood. And then we have two adjustments to be able to zero effectively our illuminator, which is going to place our laser in the middle of our illuminator, which also gives us a rough zero if we use illuminator only. But this guy is more so catered to be able to engage from 25 yards to 100 yards to 200 yards to 300 yards, as we've done with the Somo Gear. Now, as far as zero retention so far, we've had no issues with the first 500 rounds before we got here today. Right now, our round count just hit 300 plus a little more, so we're about 800 rounds in before we even start getting to our nighttime shooting. But guys, as the sun continues to go down, we're gonna dive in and we're gonna talk a little bit as we shoot. I've got my cameraman with basically the mission recorder that's gonna be on a PVS 14, so he'll be able to follow me around. We're gonna have some discussions and we're gonna see if it's worth the squeeze of your money, or should you just wait for that Holosun Iris coming out soon? Or perhaps go ahead and jump on board to the LaserSpeed M6 CTR, or it's the Gen 2 of the M6 that's got a little bit better footprint, and it's got some really nice illumination adjustments they've made to it. But again, you're going to spend a little bit more money, and it's still a Chinese product. Where you spend your money is your decision, but hopefully after watching the rest of this video, you'll be a little more educated about what to do in your instance for your IR purchases. Let's get into it.